أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Yeah, and I'm not stuck on the US open.
I'm not so sure.
So she's feeling Yes, yes,
Thanks for clean clothes and food.
This is the reason I'm here. I know it's one boss, right side. Yeah, we can put both sides, don't worry. First time here and after that over there. एक हजार बहुत पचास के दोबारा कहने अमीर नहीं
Line number of your
Fantastic player. Top player. Again, you're winning Toronto Cups now is Netherlands. Sure, sure. And we've got the drop box trap for the day. Thank you. Drop box. How are you? Welcome again. And what lovely color you're wearing. Yes, how are you? Pleasure to have you with us. Hello, sir. How do you do?
Thank you.
Drop box is
Searching for those that gives it by
Next time. How's the Ambassador? Drop box is still here. Okay. Nice to meet you.
Very well, thank you. It's good to see you. She's coming. She's not yet here, but she's coming. Right. Just play.
Drop box trap is the Can't get the listing. Then you receive. So you go sorry. Once everything goes one box is we are all doing it. I think he made a statement. Did he? Therefore you may have read it. Which paper? Generals and admirals of the Pakistan Armed Forces and officers of the Pakistan Armed Forces, Chief Justice Johan Sahab, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you all at the Oxbridge lecture for this month. For those of you, I see there are a few new faces here. For those of you who are new, the Society has produced 2 presidents, 6 prime ministers, and 1 governor general amongst other people. Please switch off your mobile phones. As is the tradition, the President of the Society, Mr. Usman Ahmadeen, former Federal Minister for Petroleum and Natural Resources, and one of the best minds on oil in the world, he will introduce the guest speaker, Senator Rehman Sahiba, and then she will give a speech, after which I do the summing up. That is the tradition of the society. The summing up, perhaps because of the drone attack, has become more important today. Mr. President.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today we have one of the most important women in Pakistan, as defined by Newsweek Pakistan and identified as one of 2011's top global thinkers by Foreign Policy magazines. Senator Shari Rehman is the Vice President of the Pakistan People's Party, parliamentarian and founding chair and serving president of the Jinnah Institute. former Pakistan Ambassador to the United States, Federal Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Pakistan, and ranking member of the National Security Committee in the Parliament. Senator Rehman is also had 3 additional portfolios of the Health, Women Development and Culture as Federal Minister. An award-winning journalist from Pakistan with 20 years of experience in both broadcast and print media, he is a former editor of the Herald Tribune magazine based in Pakistan. Senator Rehman is also the architect of the first parliamentary charter and bill for women's empowerment, mover of the Hudud Ordinance Repeal Bill, mover of the Anti-Honor Killings Bill, as well as the Freedom of Information Act 2004. Her bills include the removal of colonial press laws in Pakistan, as well as legislation on domestic violence and affirmative action for women. In August 2008, Senator Rehman's move to repeal amendments in the print and publication ordinance paved the way for the constitutional protection for the print media, the RTI bill. She is the recipient of several awards, including the title of Democracy's Hero for her services for democracy, the Freedom Award for her work for media independence, an International Peace Award for Democrats, and the Jean Kirkpatrick Award for Women. She was awarded the state's highest civil award, the Shah-e-Imtiaz, in March 2013. May I now request Senator Rehman to take the floor. She will deliver a speech, and after which we will have a question and answer series.
Distinguished guests, Excellencies, Mr. Osmanuddin, Mr. Ishaluddin, organizers and members of the committee of the Oxbridge Society, thank you for waiting for me and giving me this opportunity to talk about, I'm told, South Asia in a changing world. And obviously foreign policy. I have to, at the outset, apologize for being late. Usually I'm really waiting here, receiving guests on the dot. Had a bit of a health episode, but it's not as bad as the Prime Minister's. So I'm right here in front of you. And we will do our best to get through this with as much robust discourse and richness of discussion as we hope to plan. My interest obviously is diverse, as you can see. Some of the CV was dated, but really let's talk about what we had thought about it. I had looked at foreign policy, and Amara Durrani here had mentioned to me to speak about foreign policy, and obviously it weighs on everyone's minds in Pakistan and those looking at it today. So my view was, well, first you embed it in South Asia, which is what the original message to me was. And that is very important because the region is crucial to Pakistan's foreign policy, internal policy, stability, survival, goals in the near term and medium term. So I think it's always, in any case, rational to embed any discussion on foreign policy and how Pakistan as a state is able to manage or project its power and seek external interests in an age of competing and changing strategic balances. Now, you know, I think foreign policy is in its bare bones is really defined as a function of a state's ability to project its power, to manage its external affairs and interests. The one certainty I can locate for Pakistan is that we are, or it is locked in an internal struggle to define those interests. The key issue really is, and especially as far as foreign policy is concerned, have we defined our interests? And you know, I want to qualify that by saying that there is nothing abnormal about that. Countries with both resources and power have muddled through for years, drifting from trade blip to, you know, border conflict to actual wars that have bloodied their history and memories. But they drift along. It doesn't not happen. Nobody, no country is constantly projecting a grand strategic plan to realize its best interests. Very often it's quite the opposite. Lobbies compete and pluralities with power win. That happens. So I said strategic norm, in my view, drift in my view, is the norm, not the exception in many countries' foreign policy. But it can be the norm if you are a superpower, and I don't think that's also okay, but that's often the case, a sleepy island or Switzerland. It cannot really be the norm if you are Pakistan. Why? Can Pakistan afford drift, foreign policy or strategic drift with so much at stake, with literally American drones whizzing past and Taliban driving through the same heartland with CNICs? I don't think so. So I think let's be very clear. Identity crises, evolving identities, pluralities, all those change. The drift is also a great norm in foreign policy. Pakistan can't afford it. Now, if we start with the premise that South Asia is a natural region and we sort of refract down to South Asia, and that in the 21st century, interdependence is the new goal. Certainly, I think that we are all agreed on. Interdependence is very much the new goal, not war or conflict. Then we make one great presumption, that the rational impulse rules foreign policy in this region. We are always assuming those who critique foreign policy in Pakistan and others, and even those who are stakeholders and interested, that the rational is driving foreign policy. Well, I think that if policy is a signal of national interest, then the search for the rational is certainly one path we have all seen this region try on emphasize, but it has not been the driving force on any high road to maximizing common gains. Rational policy has, as an end goal, has in fact been the diffident gatecrasher at the high table of regional diplomacy. So it's always built in to, say, a menu for talks, composite or otherwise, you can call them what you like. But that does not, as you all know, result in any outcomes that look even reasonably rational. Regional ties, so for Pakistan the region is very important given its embeddedness in it, are now coated with a thick layer of neuralgia, both with India and with Afghanistan. Now that's obviously not a happy place to be in, or even vaguely optimal. And to amplify this point, I can roll out an entire chronology of conflict, of missed opportunities, and build a whole diorama of distrust between India and Pakistan to fill the 20 minutes with the din of our collective folly. It can carry on for a good many hours. Our collective folly is a chronology and a tale that continues to be told and resonates in many hallways and corridors of power. But I think for this audience, surely schooled in the ontology of our regional dystopia, this deconstruction is, or unbundling, is surely not required. I don't need to get into our wars, our regional wars, and the dismemberment of Bangladesh on one side, the distrust that has created, and of course what is going down in Afghanistan 30 years ago, our encounter there, and how it continues to still define us. Well, I mean, where else do you have two nuclear neighbors not divided by an ocean like the Soviet Union once was and the United States, locked for years in hot wars, or at best a cold peace? Nowhere else in the world. Nowhere else in the world. So clearly, if there's one thing that is certain, it is that we are not pursuing the rational. We are acting out. And acting out in young people's jargon today means just playing out your insecurities, your whatever it is, your anxieties on a stage. And of course, this is a global stage. It's a dangerous one to be acting out. And anger, ladies and gentlemen, is not a policy. It's not even a plan. I mean, when you see, for instance, a drone whizzing overhead, you see in many forums just anger. Anger has dressed itself up in many countries as policy. From India, you see diplomacy or statements emanating that sound very angry. That's not policy, that's just anger. So anger is not a plan. I keep telling my colleagues, that's not a policy. You need to have a policy that manages your outcomes in your best interests. That's assuming that we are acting rationally. So the assumption that everybody is a rational player is not one you can easily make. Even militaries all over the world don't necessarily make rational decisions. I'm sure you can defend Hiroshima somewhere or Nagasaki. I still don't call that a rational decision, despite the visit President Obama made. I don't call that a rational decision. Rational decisions are made collectively and are thought out over time. And I think that we can use this opportunity today to reflect a little bit interactively, perhaps, on how foreign policy can become a little more rational, but it's going to be difficult. Two broad inflection points underpin the map of enduring distrust between Pakistan and its neighbors, two neighbors. And the first one we have in plain sight. That's how Pakistan is caricaturized internationally. From allusion to hint to dinner table conversation to headline, under and over the surface of every discourse, Pakistan's primordial anxieties are treated as both symptom and cause of each episode that flares up in the region. It has become, not entirely unreasonably, the intellectual norm to link the Pakistani state's prickliness with India, for instance, as a dysfunction of its own identity, of its genetic identity. Perhaps Pakistan never quite defined itself. So foreign policy always goes back to these questions if you drill down just a little bit. Oh, but you know, Pakistan's own creation has been bogged in this. You really have to move on. I often say this to people in Delhi who are like, but was partition needed? I mean, you're questioning our creation story. And how does that make you feel? I can't go to Bangladesh and sort of say, well, you just seceded. I need to honor and respect their creation story, which may mean taking responsibility for, say, what West Pakistan did wrong. So these things do matter. You know, we get told constantly that with Afghanistan, the problem is quite the opposite, but it is rooted in the same genetic footprint of unresolved borders and ethnic anxieties. Again, this audience does not need an unbundling of that ontology either. We all know how Pakistan and Afghanistan feel about each other. It's complex, it's layered, it cannot be defined in one word, and that surely cannot be reducible to hate. You may see that on the airwaves, but that cannot be policy towards each other, and it cannot be an abiding existential norm. And foreign policy has to consider these kind of equations as well. So, I mean, instead of making Pakistan feel that it was spawned in communalist hate, my message to the world, always as ambassador or as parliamentarian or minister has been, or civil society actor, and I think the last is sometimes most important, is that don't keep telling Pakistan it was spawned in communalist hate, that what it's gotten wrong is its own origins, that what it's gotten wrong is what it's doing, that the state is linked to all non-state actor activity outside its borders, that it must now take responsibility for everything going wrong in the region. That's what we are told. So it strips those of us of agency. Those who try to make peace, who try to bring the rational to the center of foreign policy discourse, gets stripped of agency when an ambassador says, well, actually, you guys were, this Pathankot. Even the Indians have said the state was not involved in Pathankot. I wanted to take a picture and put it on Twitter. I then got busy. But, that is what we are confronted with. The refraction of past sins constantly laid on the table when we think we are trying to change course. It's bad news that it's not happening overnight. My own questions to Parliament about after I saw Mullah Mansoor's death and the drone, both point to this kind of the disconnect we have between our institutional power making, who's taking responsibility. The whole question of sovereignty, territoriality. The drone is an egregious attack, and it is an egregious infringement. I won't be intellectually trendy like a lot of my friends like to be, that, oh, but what about Mullah Mansoor, wasn't he? The two, of course he was impeding and impinging and violating Pakistan's sovereign writ. What was he doing there? But so is the drone. Let's be very clear. It is, in some countries, treated as an act of war. Now, I've raised my tone here. It's sounding angry. No, it can't be beyond this. This is the most it can go. Because anger is not a plan, it's not a foreign policy, just like hope is not a plan or a foreign policy. You can't posit either of these as the way forward, as a strategic choice. What strategic choice are we making? I think under civilian rule, Pakistan attempted very hard to make a strategic choice, and that was 5 years ago, to move away from the old ball and chain of strategic depth in Afghanistan. I call it ball and chain because I thought it weighed us down more than anybody else. And so, an embrace of all ethnicities was made the norm, a slow turn of that screw. And there was appreciation of Pakistan's efforts in political reconciliation. I always was a little queasy about a reconciliation that is without its women. Does everybody's eyes gloss over when I say that? In every national security or foreign policy conversation, eyes gloss over. Oh, women, yes, of course, Ambassador, or Madam, we will have them in the room. Okay. I can't speak to another country's foreign policy, and I do know that President Ghani has done more than any other president or head of state or country to lead women into a mainstream. It's difficult over there, and he's made exceptional headways in the face of serious obstacles. And he's gone out of his way to proactively mainstream women in places that matter. But that's another conversation. The point here is, what is Pakistan doing? I mean, who can deny Pakistan's uneasy relationship to its own past and its long, terrible encounter with violent extremism today? It's linked to policy and foreign policy. The covert subconventional wars, the proxy warriors once everybody was so comfortable with, even in the Oval Office, pictures of them, and in America, in Afghanistan. And then, of course, they were channeled towards Kashmir. You saw all that happening. I mean, that's the long trail of terrorist implosions at home and non-state implosions abroad, explosions abroad. I think we've all seen those. But that is today's dominant bilateral, multilateral narrative, and even now internal narrative. After finding Mullah Mansoor in Balochistan, it is, ladies and gentlemen, the dominant global narrative. Pakistan's got to take responsibility for this. But I mean, the bad news is, in the absence of a clear, observable trend line that challenges both the need for a hedge and a narrative and a policy, this is where you stay. From Pakistan will lurch from being either a spoiler or a peacemaker, a reconciler or the problem. Now, other players in this mess also have to decide what Pakistan's role must be. You cannot ask me in a trilateral or quadrilateral to engage with Afghanistan and its various players as legitimate for a conversation on a possible political reconciliation for the future. Because you can if it's an Afghan choice. So we privileged Afghan decision making, Afghan sovereignty. It has to be an Afghan choice. You must not make play ducks and drakes or treat Afghanistan as a strategic backup. You must not privilege one group over the other. This is English for no more Taliban privilege, right? But then how does that same country say, okay, we'll also do the peace talk stuff with you. We'll try and resolve this as Kabul's ask, and often Washington's ask as well. How? I know bomb and talk and fight are a norm, but wake up call, they haven't worked in many battlegrounds and battlefields today. So if Pakistan is to do this, then and seek to move away from the use of that kind of power, subconventional, covert, this, that, then you can't tell its interlocutors to bring the problem to the table also. You really cannot. I'm not being naive. I've seen this at the wheels. It's just not. There can't be one handler for the hard people and one handler for the not so hard people. That is how the field works. But that field has to come to the negotiating table. It has to become part of policy. I'm stating to you the problem as I see it. I think Pakistan is unable to speak truth to global power. It has gotten used to not telling its story. It has gotten used to being told what to do. It has not said, but this is what I have been doing, and could you point me in the right direction? For instance, and boil it down to the nub of the problem. Islamabad will not be able to bring peace to Afghanistan while it fights a war against terrorism and Taliban at home, while its border stays open with Afghanistan. It's not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not possible. Many of you are strategic and tactically conversant with how such battlefields and battlegrounds operate. For those who are not, you usually need a hammer and anvil. And it's entirely unfortunate